Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Imagine a bunch of clueless people living in a city with no real purpose, just drifting through life, and then one day they suddenly get superpowers. How wild would that be? That's exactly what today's story is about. We're diving into a 2026 superhero comedy K-drama called The Wonder Fools. So without dragging it out, let's jump straight into the first episode. As the episode opens, we meet the heroine of our story, Kina. Right now she's working at her grandmother's tiny restaurant, doing a small job cutting up onions and prepping ingredients for her grandma. And she's sitting there worrying about why her own life never seems to go anywhere. On top of that, blood starts coming from her nose, because ever since she was born, Kina has had serious heart problems. So she goes to see her doctor to ask if something's wrong with her heart again, and the doctor tells her that her heart condition is very bad and she only has a few months left to live. Devastated by this, she walks down the street wondering why all of this only ever happens to her. Just then, some people from a local church approach her and tell her that the world is going to end on December 31st this year, and if she wants eternal peace for her soul, she should come pray with them. She snaps back that she won't even be alive until December 31st, that she'll be dead long before that, and that the gods are always so cruel to her, and she ends up causing a whole scene on that street. The scene then cuts to that night, where we're shown an old man who has come to the area's waste dumping ground to scavenge. But suddenly, he falls into a strange black-colored water that has flowed in from somewhere, and within moments his body starts changing, with scales like a fish beginning to cover his skin. The next day, this man's best friend, an old man named Kim, comes to the police station to report that his friend has gone missing, but the police there don't take it seriously at all. Around the same time, a middle-aged man named Sun also comes to the station. He's constantly complaining that locals keep dumping garbage everywhere and demands they properly inspect that waste dumping site, saying there are genetically mutated creatures there. But since he has no proof, the police find his ramblings hard to swallow. So to get rid of the problem, they hand his case over to a newly assigned officer named Lee. When Sun explains everything to Lee, Lee tells him it's actually private property, so without a formal complaint the police can't get involved. So even though Sun pointed out something genuinely dangerous for his town, nobody pays attention, and an angry Sun storms out of there. Meanwhile, old Kim, who'd come to the station earlier, goes and meets Lee and tells him that something is very wrong in this town, that just like 20 years ago, people are going missing one by one. But Lee doesn't take this seriously either. After that, when Kim goes back to his waste scavenging job, those same church worshippers we saw earlier show up and hand him a notice, telling him the world ends on December 31st and asking him to come with them for peace. When Kim refuses, one of them uses their powers to lift all the objects around into the air, and Kim is left totally shocked. Meanwhile, our heroine Kina goes to ask her beloved grandmother, the one person she has, for some money. Since the doctor told her she's dying, she wants to fulfill her biggest dream of traveling before she goes. But her grandmother, who doesn't know any of this, refuses, saying she won't give money just to waste it. So Kina breaks open her piggy bank but barely finds anything, grabs what little she has, takes her luggage and walks out. On her way out, she asks her good friend Kong, who also works at her grandmother's restaurant peeling onions alongside her, for money too, but he has nothing to give her either. Around the same time, back at the police station, we see Sun again. Since he doesn't have a proper job, even his wife doesn't really respect or value him. Even his daughter doesn't have much attachment to her father, maybe from watching how he behaves Everyone treats him like a fool. Now showing Kina again, she takes her suitcase to a supermarket and, probably for safety on her travels, buys a couple of knives and some supplies. At that same moment, the new officer Lee had heard about Kina, who was known as a troublemaker in town, arriving at the supermarket. As she's buying these knives and weapons and remembering how, like Kim said, so many people have gone missing from this town, Lee also notices gray hair caught in her suitcase. Putting it all together, he gets suspicious of her. Lee secretly follows her and asks her to open the suitcase. When she refuses, he tries to grab it, and in the struggle it pops open and everything inside spills out. But instead of what he expected, it's full of her favorite gray teddy bear, her underwear, and a bunch of makeup. In the middle of this, the knife she'd bought goes flying, and to stop it from falling on her, Lee uses his hand to catch it. An angry Kina then tells him to put all her things back and fix it properly, and gives him a smack. Around this time, since she still hasn't come home, her grandmother calls her, and Kina says she's going away because it's her dream. But Grandma tells her heart isn't well and traveling isn't good for her right now, and calls her back home. But Kina had never actually told her grandmother about her dream to travel before she dies, or how critical her condition really is. Determined to fulfill her wish no matter what, she goes to set up money for the trip and visits her only real friend, Kong. At this point, Kong's other friend, the son we saw earlier, was also sitting there, so she goes to both of them and pitches her idea. The plan is simple. The two of them will pretend to kidnap her, record a video, and send it to her grandmother. Then they'll extort a big amount from Grandma and give the two of them a cut. At first they both hesitate, but since they badly need the money for their own personal needs, they end up agreeing. So they execute the plan, tying Kina to a chair and acting out a fake kidnapping drama while shooting the video. After that, Sun and Kong are talking about how the video they shot looks real and how they'll go ahead with the plan. But right then, Kina suddenly feels like her heart is hurting. Because they'd tied her to the chair very tightly and she was already in such a critical state, her breathing suddenly stops. Poor Kong and Sun, with their backs turned, don't realize anything. When they try to wake her up, they realize things have gone terribly wrong and that Kina, who was with them just moments ago, has died. They try everything to save her, but then realize how it'll look from the outside, that they kidnapped her and recorded a video for money, and that they'll be blamed. Realizing they'd end up in jail, they decide to take Kina's body to that waste dumping ground for now, leave it there until they figure out a solution, and deal with it later. At the same time, the lady in the room next to Lee's comes and bangs on his door, scolding him about all the noise and asking why so much sound is coming from his room at night. When we look, Lee's room appears to have been wrecked by someone. From this, we can tell there's some mystery behind him. Moreover, he picks up a file in his hand and looks through details of many missing children. Just like Kim said earlier, he's investigating children who went missing from here 20 years ago. So he goes looking for Kim to talk to him. Meanwhile, those church people drag Kim and throw him into a lab. Right in front of him, he can see his friend, the one he reported missing. But that man has changed from human form into something halfway between a man and a fish. From this, we understand that the church people are secretly running experiments, and the disappearances of all these people are connected to them. Meanwhile, Kong and Sun reach the waste ground with Kina's body, and just as they're about to abandon it, they're full of guilt and grief. Officer Lee arrives. He asks them, Weren't you the ones who complained about people dumping waste here and now you're doing the same? Not knowing the waste they're carrying is actually Keena's body, he goes to check it. But just then the pushcart holding the body rolls down a slope, and Keena's body is flung out and falls into some kind of chemical water draining into the waste ground. Seeing this, Lee, now smelling a murder attempt, goes straight to the body. Realizing they're caught, Kong and Sun jump into the water and explain everything that happened, saying they never meant to commit murder and that it was all her plan. But as an officer, Lee has to report this through the station. As they're talking, suddenly Keena's body is nowhere to be seen. Noticing this, Lee starts to suspect that someone else might be involved in this murder. Right then the police arrive and question everyone. Just as Lee says he saw a dead body and that it was Keena, the grandmother's granddaughter from the restaurant. Suddenly Keena is standing right behind him, perfectly fine, and everyone there is shocked, because moments ago they'd all seen her lying there, not breathing, genuinely dead. So seeing her standing there without a scratch, Lee is left completely stunned and unable to make sense of it. The scene blacks out, and then we're shown a flashback. Earlier, when Lee and Keena were fighting over that misunderstanding and her luggage went flying, Lee had pulled her close to protect her from the falling knife. Now we can see those same objects stuck and pinned against the wall in that exact spot. Actually, during that collision, Lee used his hand to control those objects and pin them to the wall so they wouldn't fall on Keena. From this we understand that Lee is not an ordinary person. He has secret superpowers. His power is to make the objects around him float in the air and hold them under control. And with that scene revealed, today's episode ends. The next episode opens by showing Keena's grandmother, tense and worried about where the heartsick Keena has gone and why she hasn't come home so late. Keena's grandmother calls a young man she knows, someone who used to work in the police and whom she considers like her own son, and tells him Keena left home without telling her, asking him to track her location. When he checks Keena's phone signal, it first shows her on Jeju Island. But 2 minutes later, her location is near the restaurant. Since the location keeps changing back and forth, they can't pin down where she actually is. So her grandmother goes to her room to check, and that's when she realizes Keena left with her full luggage. Already worried about the heartsick girl doing this, Grandma is full of tension. Meanwhile, Lee is at the police station with Kong and Sun, and when the police ask them to explain what happened, Keena, like before, covers it up, saying they just went out for a walk. After that, the two of them go to visit Keena, who's now admitted in the hospital. There she tells them she really felt like she had died, but she has no memory of what happened after, except a memory of standing in some tunnel looking at someone whose face she couldn't make out. She tells them that maybe she didn't actually die, maybe it was a near-death experience that caused all this. After that, while they're discussing the kidnapping and where their plan went wrong, her grandmother overhears everything and walks in. The moment the three fools see Grandma, they panic and try to hide all over the hospital room. Keena, sure she's about to get an earful, climbs into a cupboard, and suddenly she vanishes from there and appears in some Josianera setting, in front of a king punishing two people, right in the middle of a watching crowd. Stunned and not understanding what's happening, she stands there frozen, and in that time Grandma catches Kong and Sun back in the room. When Grandma goes to grab her too, she's not in the cupboard, so Grandma wonders where she went, closes it, and when she opens it again, Kina is right there inside the cupboard. Shocked at how she vanished and reappeared, Kina, distressed that something is happening to her, hugs her grandma and cries, saying she has some serious problems. Grandma's heart softens. She sets aside her anger and talks gently with her. Meanwhile, we're shown Lee watching all this from outside. To clear up his big doubt about how Kina's heart stopped, how she died, and how she came back to life, he started following her. Meanwhile, a lot of people come to old Kim, the waste scavenger, and ask him about an immortal child, one who can never die. Kim replies that he hasn't seen any immortal child, but he recently saw number 397 at the police station, though that person didn't recognize him. Now we finally see what happened in the flashback. 20 years ago, the people running this church were secretly conducting many experiments under the cover of the church. As part of that, they kidnapped many children and ran extremely painful, brutal experiments on them to create new abilities in each of them. One of the children they'd captured back then, number 3972, was actually our police officer Lee. As part of the experiments there, he'd gained the ability to make objects around him float into the air. Each of the other children with him had gotten different abilities too. But because Lee had been newly exposed to this ability and couldn't control it, the objects around him kept flying around fully out of control, causing problems, and the other kids started getting scared of his ability. One day, when his out-of-control ability put everyone in danger, a child came up to him, took his hand, and taught him how to control the ability and relax his mind. But in the process, Lee accidentally caused a small cut on that child's head. When Lee felt bad about it, the child told him not to worry, that the wound would heal quickly, and that he was never going to die anyway. That child was the one known as the immortal child, and it's this immortal child who never dies that the church people are now searching for, as we saw earlier. Meanwhile, Lee wakes up startled from a dream, having seen all these flashback events. We're also shown all the things in his room floating in the air. Every single night he sees this dream he never wants to remember, and his powers come back out of control, which is why his room ends up in chaos and his neighbor comes to scold him. Meanwhile, Kina, already hospitalized, has Grandma go see her doctor to check on her heart condition. The doctor, looking at her test results and X-ray report, is stunned and tells Grandma that, instead of only having a few months left, Kina's critically bad heart is now completely normal. She has no symptoms of any illness and is completely healthy. The doctor calls it a real miracle. Grandma can't believe it at first, but when the doctor keeps calling it a miracle, something feels strange and off to her. So Grandma goes home and secretly phones someone named Choi. Meanwhile, Kong and Sun, still not understanding what happened, are talking, and a very frustrated Kong, worried that if Grandma finds out they caused Kina's death, she'll make a different decision about them, casually flicks a drink can across the room, and it punches a hole right through the wall of his house. Seeing this, he's stunned, wondering how throwing a can made such a big hole in his house. Meanwhile, Sun arrives home, and while talking with his wife and daughter and reaching into the fridge for something to drink, his hand suddenly sticks to the fridge, and he can't pull it off no matter what. Suddenly, not understanding what's happening to him, poor son stands there confused. Meanwhile, Kina and Grandma are eating together, and Grandma tells her heart has no problem anymore and she's completely healthy. She admits she knew Kina loved to travel but kept her from going out of fear about her heart, and now that she's healthy, she can travel as much as she wants and live by her own wishes. Grandma gives her permission, but with a few conditions. First, to handle her own affairs, Kina has to find a decent job. Around the same time, when that person Choi calls Grandma's phone, Grandma steps away from Kina and talks secretly, and the two of them decide to meet in secret. The next day, while Kina is still wondering how she suddenly vanished, and Kong is still racking his brain over how throwing a can blew a hole in his house, Lee comes by and asks Kina if she's ever heard of something called a wonder kind. But she says she's never heard it in her life and that she can't even pronounce it. Lee realizes she genuinely knows nothing about it. Still, when he asks how she who died came back to life, she tells him she didn't die, she was just sleeping. But in her own mind, she's asking herself the very same question. Then Kina, remembering that Kong and Son shot that kidnapping video and never deleted the footage from the camera, asks Kong about it, and they realize that in all the panic that day, if that footage falls into someone else's hands, they're done. Kina quickly goes with the two of them to search that shed where they'd tied her up, looking for the camera. Behind her, Lee is also walking along, full of suspicions about her. But unknown to all three of them, yet another person is following them, observing them from behind. So Kina reaches that shed where they'd staged the kidnapping and searches all over for the camera that recorded the video, but she can't find it. But at the same time, Lee, who'd arrived there, gets the camera from another scavenger who'd come to that shed. Cross-checking the footage, he sees that just as Kina's plan went, when they had her tied up, she suddenly couldn't breathe and died. So he realizes that Kina's wasn't a near-death experience at all. She had actually died. From this, he suspects she might have a superpower like his, since we saw 20 years ago they captured them and ran experiments. He wonders whether they ran experiments on Kina too, making her a wonder kind, and decides to test it. While Kina is inside that shed, he uses his power to destroy the shed and make everything fall onto Kina, who's trapped inside. He does this to clear his doubt about whether she'll die in this accident and come back to life again. Right then Sun, who heard about the camera from Kong, arrives to see Kina and witnesses everything happening there. As the shed completely collapses and is about to fall on Kina, she covers her face, accepting her fate, and at that exact moment she teleports onto a boat floating in the middle of an ocean. So the superpower our Kina has received is teleportation. Still unable to believe her own eyes, she stands there amazed. Meanwhile, the detective tracking her signal to help Grandma is stunned, wondering how she suddenly got to the middle of the sea. And remember earlier when Kina teleported in the hospital into a Joseon era setting. Actually, she hadn't teleported to the Joseon era at all. She'd teleported into a scene from a drama she'd recently watched. Now we're shown that very episode playing on the TV. So Kina teleports to random places she's seen or knows of. but she doesn't understand how or why it happens. Then the scene blacks out, and we see Grandma getting a call from that person Choi. Actually, this Choi was one of the directors among the group that 20 years ago captured those kids and ran experiments on them. But now, we're shown three people coming to his house. Then, as Choi sits in his home and one of the people who came in stands beside a photo of Kina's grandmother, totally unexpectedly, Choi's blood splatters onto that photo and he is killed. With that scene, today's episode ends. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're watching the third episode of the drama The Wonder Fools. In the last episode, we saw Kina's teleportation ability, and we also saw the church people searching for that eternal, immortal child. As today's episode begins, just like we left off last time, Lee, to figure out whether Kina is really a wonder kind and what her powers are, destroys that shed, and Kina barely teleports out and ends up in the middle of an ocean. Lee comes to check what happened to her, but she's nowhere to be seen. But right on time, Kina teleports back from the ocean to right next to him. Seeing her, a shocked Lee uses his powers to fling her far away. At the same time, we're shown a church member named Pal, watching everything from a distance. Then Pal goes to the two ladies we saw at the end of the previous episode and tells them he directly saw number 3972 and witnessed his power firsthand. Actually, these three are people the scientists created through experiments under the cover of that church, with abilities just like Lee. They were the three who were with Lee during that incident 20 years ago. But no matter what, this Pal held a lot of anger toward Lee. Because Lee and Pal had gotten the same ability, both could control the objects around them. But since Lee was much stronger than Pal from childhood, and always got more attention than Pal, that jealousy and anger toward Lee always stayed with Pal. After that, we're shown Kina, flung away by Lee earlier now. Regaining consciousness at Kong's house. Waking up, she realizes what she saw wasn't a dream but really happened, and tells Kong that something happened to her, that she now has superpowers and can teleport. Kong tells her it's not just her, he got a super strength power too, and sometimes he has tremendous strength. He explains how casually throwing that can earlier punched a big hole in his house. So to find out whether Sun also has some superpower, the two of them go to him and ask. But Sun is just standing there hugging a plant, unable to let go of it. He says he doesn't understand anything they're saying. But no matter how much he tries, he can't hide the truth for long. Because he isn't actually hugging that plant, his hand is stuck to it. It had been stuck for so long that he couldn't move or get away from there. So Kina got teleportation, Kong got strength, and our Sun got a superpower to stick to objects. All three rack their brains over how and why they got these superpowers. Kina and Kong are happy about it, but Sun's face is full of tension. When they ask him about it, it turns out it's not just the three of them. Lee also has a power to control objects, and earlier in that shed Lee used that power on Kina and tried to kill her, and Sun tells Kina all the incidents that happened there. Hearing this, Kina goes to the police station furious to ask Lee why he tried to attack and kill her. But Lee dodges her, saying she's crazy and that they don't understand anything he says. But to dig out the truth behind it, Kina keeps grilling him relentlessly disturbing him so much he can't even do his duty. Finally fed up, Lee storms out of the station, but she gives him no peace there either, calling Kong along and following Lee. Meanwhile, the day before, Grandma had decided to secretly meet the director Choi. We saw in the last episode that he was killed. So learning of his death, Grandma goes to the morgue to see his body and learns he supposedly committed suicide and left a letter for her, which she reads. In it he mentions a Dr. Ha, saying that 20 years ago he never conducted any experiments and that he's innocent. The old man we saw coming to Choi's house in the last episode is this Dr. Ha. So Grandma realizes Choi's death was never a suicide, but a murder committed together by Dr. Ha and those two ladies we saw earlier with Pal. Meanwhile, because of complaints about the church, two police officers come to the church, and the lady with sunglasses we saw earlier brings them inside and shows them around. But when one officer says they should be taken to the basement, the lady is startled at first. Because the experiments we saw earlier and all the people they captured, like Kim, were kept in the church's basement. So the lady takes the officers to the basement, and they're amazed by what they see, because, unexpectedly, the basement now looks like a very calm, quiet, beautiful garden. Kim, who's lying there, asks these officers to save him, but they can't see Kim because what they're seeing isn't real. That lady with the sunglasses has the ability to create hallucinations. She gets into their minds and gives them this hallucination, so they report that the church is clear and there's no problem here. But at the same time, one of the officers starts sweating terribly and feels suddenly sick. The scene cuts, and then we're shown Ki-na and her group again. Since Lee won't tell them the truth no matter how much they ask, the three follow Lee all day, giving him no peace, constantly asking him about these superpowers. When he still won't say anything, they kidnap him into their car and demand he tell the truth. As they're driving along in that car, the two officers who'd gone to the church earlier, their vehicle, now with no bell and no brakes, comes crashing toward them, and the out-of-control car flips and falls down into a lower ground. Wondering what happened, all four go to check the car, and somehow they pull out the officer who was normal, but they can't rescue the other one, because his body is now twisted, slime-like. Shocked at first, but realizing the car is catching fire and his life is in danger, they decide to rescue him somehow. Our Ki-na, Kong, and Sun try their best, but Lee just stands aside without helping. So Ki-na requests his help. With no other choice, Lee brings out his telekinesis power that lifts objects and rescues the officer trapped inside the car. Meanwhile, Sun, seeing the car catch fire, grabs a bucket of water to put it out. But when he goes to the side of the car, his superpower kicks in and his hand sticks to the car. Since they're all newly powered, they can't control these powers at all. So when Kong sees Sun stuck to the car and comes to rescue him, grabbing him, now Kong gets stuck to Sun's hand. Then, as the fire spreads more and there's a chance the car explodes, a terrified Ki-na asks Lee one more time to use his power, and he somehow flings Kong far away. But because Sun is so sticky from his power, Lee can't separate him. As the fire on that car spreads even more, an anxious and distressed Kong takes a chance, runs straight up to Sun, grabs his hand to pull him back, and right at that timing, his power activates and they manage to separate a small piece of the car along with Sun's hand. Meanwhile, Lee uses his superpower to fling the about-to-explode car far away. So all four of them, using their four powers, save themselves from the danger and rescue the others too. Seeing all this, an excited Kina believes that from today they're a team, and that if they work like this they can save everyone. But Lee goes off and examines a lot of hidden reports in the city's records and figures out how they got these abilities. Actually, when they came to dump Kina's dead body at the waste ground, the body toppled and fell into the waste water there, and the two of them had gone into that water to retrieve her body. Actually, this waste water comes from that church, so even now Dr. Ha is running experiments there. And because the officer earlier stepped in that same water, he turned slime-like. Lee figures out all of this. As he comes out after discovering all this, Pal, who has the same superpower as Lee, shows up looking for him and talks with him. Through that, we learn Pal calls the two ladies we saw sisters. So all of them now work as Dr. Ha's supporters, and they're still conducting these experiments and killing everyone who fails. He warns Lee to look after his own losers, and that he'll make a decision about the ones in his hands, and then Pal leaves. Hearing this, Lee realizes Ki-Na, Kong, and Sun are in danger, and later convinces Ki-Na to use her powers carefully and not create a scene with them unnecessarily. But no matter how much he tries to make her understand, she requests that he teach them to control these powers. She also asks him anxiously, if one day she loses these powers, will she die then? And our Ki-Na, who died once, has a strong wish to live and survive, which Lee now understands well, and her childish behavior and constant irritations, even Lee is starting to enjoy them a little. Meanwhile, Kina steps out, happy that she won't have to die anymore and excited about having superpowers, dancing down the road on her way home. But at the same time, Pal, who's been constantly observing her, arrives and tries to attack her, and at that exact moment, Lee rushes in and saves her from Pal. Realizing it's very dangerous for her to be alone, Lee gives her a small job doing little tasks at the police station where he works to train her to control her superpower. Actually, Lee does this to protect her, but Kina is just thrilled to have gotten a government job. She immediately calls her grandmother to tell her, and Grandma, excited that her granddaughter got a job, dances and sings down the road just like Kina and heads straight to the restaurant. But this happiness didn't last long. When Grandma went home, we're shown Dr. Ha waiting for her, along with the two ladies called the sisters, and with that, today's episode ends. So friends, Dr. Ha has finally met our grandma, and from their encounter we can tell this isn't the first time. The two of them already know each other. So whether Grandma has any connection to that church and the experiments happening there, and what secrets she's trying to hide, we'll see all of that in the next episode. So until then, everyone take care. Bye-bye. As today's episode begins, we're shown a little girl named Ju-Ran. Ju-Ran is a child who can't hear, but now Dr. Ha comes to her and gives her a hearing aid. Actually, this Ju-Ran was one of those sisters. Ju-Ran was a child with a unique ability to get into others' minds and control them to get what she wanted. Not just Ju-Ran, but Pal, and Ju-Ran's other half-blind sister too. All of them considered Dr. Ha like their own father. Actually, The only ones who survived that fire at the church 20 years ago were these three, along with our Lee. And the ones who saved Dr. Ha from that fire were also these three. But whatever the case, there was a small side effect for those who got powers from these experiments. That is, everyone who got these unique abilities is slowly dying. And the solution to this side effect was somehow related to that immortal child who never dies. So they're all waiting to find that immortal child and cure themselves. After that, just like we left off last episode, Dr. Ha and the three of them go meet Ki Na's grandmother and talk with her. Now we finally understand Grandma's connection to those experiments. Actually, Grandma knew that experiments were happening under the cover of that church and that Dr. Ha was leading them. But she had no idea that in the name of these experiments, the church people were brutally hurting and torturing all the children there. Believing that giving children new abilities would be a good thing for the children and for our world, Grandma supported it and funded the experiments financially. It was actually because of Grandma's contribution that experiments like these were able to happen, but she had no idea about Dr. Ha's evil intentions behind it. After that, Dr. Ha asks Grandma where the immortal child who escaped that day is and what she did with him. When Grandma says he died, they don't believe her, since that child was immortal and would never die. Now in a flashback we see what really happened 20 years ago. Because that immortal child there could never die, Dr. Ha ran the most experiments on him, killing him over and over, stopping his heartbeat, and then watching it start beating again moments later because of his immortality. Each time the little child died, he died in agonizing, brutal pain. And our Lee could only cry and scream, helpless, watching all the cruelty Dr. Ha inflicted on that child. One day, as the experiments on him grew horribly brutal, Lee, overcome with anger and grief, used his powers, lost control of them, and that's how a huge fire and explosion happened there. But in that explosion, most of the scientists and children there died. The regret and guilt of having caused so many deaths is why every night he wakes up startled, his powers spinning out of his control. And that day was the last time any of them ever saw that immortal child. After that, Lee searched for that child many times but could never find him. But now, when Ki Na rose up from death, he wonders whether she might be that immortal child. Yet the immortal child who was his friend in that lab 20 years ago was actually a boy, and since Ki Na is a girl, he chalks it up to his own confusion. The next day, since Lee had set up that small job for Ki Na, he calls her in for work. But totally unexpected to him, she shows up there along with her best friends Kong and Mr. Sun. Seeing all three of these troublemakers who give them grief together, Lee's coworkers stare at him in amazement. Meanwhile, the church people arrive offering to help clean the streets, but really they've come to eliminate Ki Na, Kong, and Sun, whom they see as defective. Realizing this, Lee quietly calls them away and talks to them personally. After that, Lee takes the three of them into a room and, hiding the truth that their lives are in danger, redirects their attention by asking them to figure out how their powers activate. Ki Na keeps teleporting without knowing when or how. Likewise, Sun doesn't know when his body becomes sticky, and Kong doesn't understand when his body gets that strength either. So Lee asks all three of them to spend the entire day inside that room and figure out how and when their powers activate, and locks the room. Actually, Lee does this to protect them, but not understanding that the three think Lee is personally training them and concentrate on their powers. Meanwhile, in the lab, remember that man who turned fish-like that they kept there. He's now died, unable to bear the experiments. Seeing this, the half-blind sister anxiously asks her sister Juran whether their fate will be the same if they don't find the immortal child and the cure. Juran consoles her, saying they see Dr. Ha like a father, that they must trust him, and that he'll definitely protect them once he finds the immortal child. Meanwhile, the detective who'd been helping Grandma comes to see her and shows her some CCTV footage. In it, one night Kina is talking excitedly to herself, and the church people, realizing she's a defective, come looking for her, and as Pal walks toward her to grab her, Kina suddenly vanishes from that spot, leaving them all stunned. Grandma sees all this clearly in that footage. Actually, seeing this is when Grandma realizes her granddaughter has a superpower and a teleportation ability. As Grandma stands horrified, the real detective calls her phone. That's when she realizes the one who showed her that footage wasn't the real detective at all, but one of the sisters, the half-blind wonder kind, using her hallucination power to try to learn from Grandma the details of the immortal child. But hearing this, Grandma asks her, "What do you trust about Dr. Ha to follow behind him? He treated you so abusively and ran such brutal experiments on you. How can you see him like a father and stand with him?" The sister replies that at least during that fire he protected them, while Grandma abandoned them. Hearing this, Grandma says Dr. Ha has twisted their minds with so many lies and that she never abandoned them. But the sister leaves, ignoring Grandma. Then Grandma calls the real detective and tells him to find Kina's location as fast as possible because she's in serious danger. Meanwhile, our three wonder fools are working on activating their powers, and Lee is working alongside the people who came from the church. Just then, the wonder kind pal arrives there and uses Lee's own telekinesis power against him, lifting all the objects on that ground into the air to drop them on Lee. Lee uses his power to hold them back as much as possible, keeping them suspended in the air. So the two of them, with equal power, fight a huge battle there using their powers. Meanwhile, no matter how much our Kina tries, she can't teleport to a place she actually intends. But suddenly she wishes to teleport to her master Lee. And when she teleports there, she sees the fight between Lee and Pal. Pal, seeing her, throws a car at her, and she teleports again right back to her friends. Shocked by what she saw, she grabs Kong and asks him, "Our master is in danger, we have to help him somehow." Unable to control her power and panicking, she teleports again to where the fight is happening, taking Kong with her. Kong asks why she dragged him there too, but poor Kina can't control her power. Either way, they decide they have to help their master. As Kong stands there panicking, not knowing what to do, his superpower suddenly activates, and he uses it on Pal, who's about to kill Lee, Kong, and Kina together, holding him back for a bit. An angry Pal then leaves Kong and turns toward Lee to kill him, and at that moment Kina, seeing this, suddenly throws herself in front to protect him. At the same time, the evil Pal throws a car at the two of them, and the car comes and crushes them both. Just as Pal thinks they're finished, Kong arrives and uses his superpower to lift the car and fling it away. But under that car he couldn't see Kina or Lee. Then, thinking Kong is also a defective who should be eliminated, Pal claps his hands to crush him with his power. Normally, whenever he claps, whatever object is in front of him gets completely crushed and destroyed. But poor Kong, not understanding what Pal is doing, sees him clapping and starts clapping along to the rhythm. So nothing happens to Kong, and the two of them end up just clapping back and forth, playing along. Earlier, when Pal threw the car at Kina and Lee to crush them, they'd actually teleported away to a very beautiful place with the northern lights. Actually, seeing the northern lights was one of the biggest dreams of travel-loving Kina. But that happiness didn't last long either, because during that earlier fight she'd gotten a big injury and now she's bleeding and about to die. Lee, crying, asks her why she came to save him, getting emotional, saying she has no regrets and that she's dying having seen her biggest dream. Poor Kina dies right there on the spot. Lee, who somewhere in his heart has feelings for her, can't bear this and cries emotionally, calling out to her over and over. Just as Lee sits there not knowing what to do, suddenly the dead Kina opens her eyes again. Both of them are stunned and confused, but this is the second time she's died and come back to life. So Lee now becomes certain that Kina has some connection to that immortal child the church people are searching for. Because 20 years ago in that lab, his friend the immortal child was actually a boy. But if Kina has now gotten immortality, there must be some connection between them. And if the church people find this out, Kina's life is in even more danger, Lee realizes, in a scene where today's episode ends. As today's episode begins, like we mentioned, because Pal used his powers so abusively, his hand has turned a kind of black color, petrified, and that part no longer works. Seeing this, Juran and the blind lady scold Pal, asking why he used his powers so much and risked his life pulling these stunts. Pal asks the blind sister why she still holds a soft corner for Lee. That's when we see a flashback. 20 years ago, when the lab people were running experiments on them, the blind sister had a small crush on Lee. As the lab people kept running continuous experiments on Lee, testing his powers, and whenever they brutally hurt poor Lee and left him sick, this blind lady used her hallucination power to give little Lee hallucinations of fish to calm and comfort him. Now we're shown all of that. Meanwhile, after Kina came back to life, Lee, having used all his powers, had fainted there, an hour. Kina teleports him to his house, changes his shirt, applies bandages, and nurses him back to health. Seeing the scars and wound marks all over his body, she understands how painful his life had been. Meanwhile, as Grandma had said, the detective reaches the place where the fight happened and finds a lot of blood there, unsure whose it is, and takes it to be examined. Because he'd used his powers so much, Lee still hadn't regained consciousness, so Kina volunteers to stay by his side while the other two go home. In his sleep, Lee calls out for his mother, talking about how much he misses her, and at one point mistaking the person beside him for his mother. He even holds Kina's hand. Seeing this, Kina understands how much he, having grown up without a mother, misses a mother's love and care. Actually, since her own mother died when she was born, she could relate to his feelings and emotions very deeply. After that, she goes to Grandma's house, brings back some things, comes to Lee's house, prepares breakfast and ointment for him, sets it all out and leaves. Then Lee wakes up, and seeing she did so much for him, he's deeply touched and sits there not knowing what to do. The next day, when Lee arrives at the police station for work, the three are already there before him, and standing behind him they keep asking who this wonder-kind pal is. why they're following them, why he attacked Lee, and how they can attack back and fight using their powers, bombarding him with questions and irritating him. Finally, fed up with her questions, he takes them outside and tells them not to discuss these things, that those people are extremely dangerous and they don't have the powers to fight them, so it's better to avoid them. He also tells them that if those people come to attack them again, to escape they should understand their own powers better and find out when their powers activate, and he agrees to train them personally. But without them knowing, the blind lady is secretly eavesdropping there. Actually seeing how closely he interacts with Kina, and how he, who never laughed before, laughs at all her jokes, the blind lady suspects Lee has feelings for her, and her anger toward Kina grows intense. After that, Lee sits the three of them down and calmly asks if they figured out when their powers activate, and after some bickering, the three share what they found. Kong figured out that his powers activate from his grief and anger when someone mocks or deeply hurts him with their words. But Sun hadn't yet found the exact reason his powers activate, and Kina, though she didn't know the exact trigger, had somehow realized that her teleportation power kicks in when her heart rate goes up. Just as they're talking, suddenly the room fills with cockroaches, and Kina sees Kong and Sun around her as giant cockroaches. Also, Lee gets a hallucination of fish coming all around. Then, seeing a blind lady standing by the door, he goes up to her and she tells him, "Why are you standing with these losers? You should really be standing with us. Only by supporting Dr. Ha can we survive," trying to win Lee over to their side. But realizing this is just a hallucination, he comes out of the illusion and uses his power to fling that blind lady far away. Immediately her power cuts off, and Kina, Kong, and Sun, who'd been fighting each other, come back to reality. After all that night, as Kina and Lee are talking, he tells her about what happened 20 years ago and about that immortal child. He also tells her that's why the church people are searching for that immortal child, and that whenever she escaped death like this, he'd suspected she might be that immortal child. But when he investigated further, he understood the truth, that the immortal child isn't alive today, but his heart still lives on inside her. He also tells her that the one who funded those experiments 20 years ago and supported them was her grandmother, and that while checking her medical records, he found she'd had a heart surgery. Actually, while Kina thought it was some minor surgery on her heart, what really happened that day was a heart transplant. Hearing this from Lee now, a shocked Kina goes straight to her grandmother. So when she was 7 years old, because she'd had heart problems from birth, she was slowly dying. Just as they didn't know what to do in that lab like we saw earlier with the immortal child, they were running many experiments, and an angry Lee, unable to control his power, caused an explosion there in which most of the children present died. During that explosion, a big rock fell on the immortal child's head. In that fall he lost half his head, so although his heart still beats, his brain suffered serious damage, and if he kept living like that it would be a hell for him. So to protect their creation and to free that child from unbearable pain, the Dr. Choi, who worked there and who later died, told Grandma that they could transplant the immortal child's heart into Kina. To protect her granddaughter's life, Grandma made that decision. So that day, the immortal child's heart was transplanted into Kina, which is why the immortal child now is Kina. Hearing all this, Kina is deeply shocked, because, even though she knew none of the truth, So many children suffered because of her grandmother, and the real immortal child's very life was lost when his heart was moved into her. And now she feels she's the cause of all these problems. And that regret now fills Keena's mind. Believing she's the cause of everything and unable to forgive the mistake Grandma made, and unable to control her emotions, Keena walks the streets crying, while Lee secretly watches over and protects her, following her. Having quarreled with Grandma, instead of going home, she stays at Kong's place that night. Meanwhile, the detective Grandma had arranged goes to that church and records everything happening there. In it, the detective realizes the church people are deceiving everyone, using these superhumans to fool people into thinking it's all miracles, and convincing them the world will end at the end of this year. Meanwhile, Keena goes straight to Lee's house and tells him she's the reason he lost his best friend, and that even though her grandmother unknowingly funded those experiments, he suffered so much because of it. Distraught, she apologizes to him, but he tells her none of it is her fault, that she shouldn't think about it and torment herself, and he comforts her. Then Kong arrives, and realizing she hasn't eaten anything in a long time, when Keena sees the snacks and treats her grandmother had prepared for her, she understands Grandma's love. She runs straight to her grandmother, and the two of them resolve their problems and misunderstandings. The next day, Keena, Kong, and Sun all move into poor Lee's house permanently without even asking his permission, and try harder to figure out how their powers activate. As a result, Sun figures out that whenever he tells a lie, that's when he sticks to objects. His power activates when he lies. Meanwhile, for Keena's power to work, her heart rate had to go up. So when she has an instant coffee and then suddenly teleports, she realizes that either drinking coffee or eating coffee candy lets her teleport to the place she wishes. So she teleports to many different countries and places. Once, when she holds Lee's hand, she teleports him along with her. She also realizes she can teleport back to the same place she'd wished, but it lands her a little away from where she went before, to that same area. She can't quite control it, but whenever she has that coffee, she keeps teleporting to that same spot. By now, Lee has roughly figured out Keena's teleportation pattern. After all that, when Lee comes home, since it's his birthday today, Keena had planned a small birthday surprise for him. Seeing this, Lee, getting a birthday surprise for the first time in his life, becomes a little emotional. Then Lee and Keena go out to buy his birthday cake, and on the way back they talk. After talking a lot about how their lives have changed, Lee, with something on his mind, tells her not to judge everyone she meets so quickly, that not everyone around her may be good, and that she shouldn't blindly trust anyone. Then, moving closer to her, he suddenly injects a drug into her neck and sedates her. After that, he calls Dr. Ha, saying he's got the immortal child and to come pick her up. That's when we understand the truth. Earlier, Dr. Ha had met Lee and told him that if he found the immortal child and handed her over, he'd give Lee a file with his details, including his parents' details. We also saw Lee calling out for his mother in his sleep. Although little Lee had such an emotional connection with his mother, as part of the experiments his memory was erased, and the memories of his mother were wiped from his mind. So it's to get the details about his parents that he made this deal with Dr. Ha. He now tells Dr. Ha all of Keena's secrets, that everyone is sure she's the immortal child. He tells them she has a teleportation ability but can't control it, and that she keeps teleporting to the same place but to different points. But at the same time, he deliberately hides from Dr. Ha the one truth, that after drinking coffee she can teleport instantly. Then Dr. Ha's people come and take Keena away, and the cake she'd bought for him is left lying on the road. With that, today's episode ends. Actually, while all this happened, Sun was hiding in a corner watching everything, and never imagining Lee, whom they trusted as a master, would betray them like this. He panics, realizing that staying with him is dangerous for them too. And without even a word to poor Kong, he goes straight home and tells his wife and daughter they have to leave immediately, that it isn't safe, that people will come to attack him and his family. But since Sun has no real job and his wife runs the house, she has no respect for her husband at all. And seeing all this, even Sun's daughter has no respect for him as a father. So neither of them believes what he says, and his wife says if you stay here she'll divorce him. Unable to do anything in his helpless state, he leaves the house. Meanwhile, Dr. Ha and his people lock Kina in a lab and begin running experiments on her. When she regains consciousness, Dr. Ha clearly tells the other scientists to make sure she never panics, because if her heart rate goes up she'll teleport away, so they must be very careful. Meanwhile, as Kina wonders how to raise her heart rate, she finds coffee in her pocket. She casually chats with Dr. Ha, and when their attention slips, she takes the coffee, drinks it, and in moments she teleports away from there. Meanwhile, Lee, deeply troubled and hiding his guilt, looks at the file Dr. Ha gave him and gets the information about his parents. He learns his father died long ago, and his mother is still alive. Actually, it was to get these details about his parents that he, against his own will, handed Kina over like this. As he sits there not knowing what to do, Kina, having teleported from the lab, comes straight to him. Getting emotional, she grabs him and asks why he betrayed her, why, when she trusted him so much, did he hand her over to Dr. Ha. She also asks, if you really were so angry with me, then why did you secretly slip this coffee into my pocket? That's when we see in a flashback. While she was sedated, it was precisely to rescue her that Lee deliberately put those coffee beans in her pocket, and he had deliberately hidden from Dr. Ha the fact that drinking coffee makes it easy for her to teleport. Understanding this, Kina asks why he did it. If he wanted to rescue her with coffee beans, was there any need to take such a risk? As she stands there getting very emotional, her heart rate rises again, and she teleports once more to another side of that lab. But this time, as she tries to teleport again, the scientists there cleverly knock her out by hitting her on the head. Then they take Kina away, and Dr. Ha begins experimenting on her, and in the process he plans to remove Kina's very heart, so that from then on she can never be immortal and she'll die. But from that, he claims they'll be able to protect the lives of the other wonder kinds, Pal and the two sisters, and that because of her, many children will be saved and she's going to sacrifice herself for them. When Dr. Ha tells Kina this, she asks whether Mr. Lee will get any benefit from this too. He tells her Lee already got what he needed, the details about his parents, and that's when Kina realizes Lee took such a huge risk handing her over to Dr. Ha just to learn about his own mother and father. Hearing this, she understands that Lee never wanted any of this and only did it out of his helpless situation. Meanwhile, when Sun tells Kong everything that happened the day before, that Lee knowingly betrayed Kina, an enraged Kong says they have to save Kina somehow and storms out. Sun, getting heated, asks him why he'd risk his own life to rescue her. That's when we learn that back in the school days. When others bullied Kong and hurt him badly and no one was there to be his friend, the only one who talked to him and stood by him was Kina, and after she joined him, no one ever had the courage to bully him again. So Kina had protected him all this time, and Kong tells Lee all of this, saying he has to rescue Kina from this situation no matter what, and goes straight to find Lee. So when Kong finds Lee, An angry Kong uses his powers to demand why Lee did this, and to give him Kina's location. Lee says there's nothing they can do anymore and uses his powers back. And as the two of them fight, Kina's grandmother calls Lee, saying she urgently needs to meet him in person. So Lee goes to meet Grandma, and there in Kina's room he reads a list of wishes she'd written. In it she'd written that she wants to travel a lot, see the northern lights, have a kiss, and finally that she wants to live past the age of 30. These were her biggest wishes. Seeing this, he feels deep guilt that he pushed toward death the very Kina whose one wish was simply to live. After that, when he speaks with Grandma, she apologizes to him for him having been among those children 20 years ago, and tells him she funded those experiments without knowing they were hurting them so much. When that poor grandma requests that he save her granddaughter Kina no matter what, Lee couldn't bring himself to sit still doing nothing. So he tells Grandma he needs a lot of people for support and leaves. Along with him, Kong and Sun join to rescue Kina. So they get hold of the internal map of that church and decide to rescue Kina. Meanwhile, Dr. Ha takes blood from Kina's body, makes a serum from it, and injects it into a rat. As a result, that rat has now become immortal. At the same time, Dr. Ha hadn't told Pal or the sisters, who are ready to give their lives for him, anything about how he found the immortal child through Lee or the operations he's running on her. So to find out what his real plan is, one of the sisters, Juran, tries to use her mind control power on Dr. Ha himself, but her powers don't work on him. He manipulates her, asking whether she'd really use her powers on her own father, and tells her he's made a serum from the immortal child. Saying that after more experiments he'll definitely give it to them so they can manage their side effects, and keeps the three of them on his side. Meanwhile, outside that church, a lot of people gather and stage a big protest, saying that what's happening there isn't worship at all, but that in the name of God they're making fools of people. Actually, that protest was just a distraction arranged by Lee and Kong with Grandma's help, to divert Dr. Ha and his group's attention so they could get inside. So from among the crowd, the detective sends Lee, Kong, and Sun through a secret door straight into the church. On the way in, it turns out this detective is also a wonder kind with abilities. Like them, he tells them that because Lee started that fire and caused an explosion 20 years ago, a few children escaped, and he was one of them. He thanks Lee, saying it was because Lee and later Grandma helped him that he was able to live a normal life. The three of them enter the church, attack all the security there, and successfully get inside. Meanwhile, when Kina opens her eyes, she sees a lot of doctors around her and a very old man lying on the next table. She realizes Dr. Ha plans to take the heart from her body and transplant it into this old man. And realizing her story is about to end here, she thinks of all the good moments of her life. At the same time, just as the doctors there come to put the knife to her body, suddenly all the medical instruments and devices in the room float into the air, and as everyone looks on, not understanding, she sees Lee, Kong, and Sun at the back using all their powers. Then, for a while, a fierce fight breaks out between the lab people and our heroes. Lee, using his powers, gives everyone there a beating, while Kong comes and rescues Kina. At the same time, that old man's securities come and safely carry him away. Lee uses his power to fling away each person attacking Kina, then quietly goes to her, and without saying anything, apologizes. And asks her to teleport to the safest place. The next moment, her heart rate rises and she teleports to Lee's house. Actually, he kisses her so she'd quickly teleport to the safest place for her, though no one expected that place would be Lee's own house. Anyway, through this we understand how precious Kina is to Lee. Meanwhile, Lee, Kong, and Sun start fighting everyone in that lab with their powers, while Kina, who reached Lee's house, resolves that she can't leave her friends and Lee alone for anyone's sake, and ready again, decides to go back to that lab to help Lee and her friends and fight with her powers, in a scene where today's episode ends. Now Kina teleports away, and Lee, with Kong and Sun by his side, stands ready to fight and defeat the remaining Wonder Kinds, Pal and the other two sisters. Meanwhile, Pal is trying to use all his powers to the max. Since they've already used so much power, as a side effect we'd seen his hand turn a blackish color earlier. Now, as he uses that power again and again with such strength, the side effect makes him a little weak. Meanwhile, our Lee, controlled and steady, uses his power to fight and defeat them. As this goes on, the blind sister uses her hallucination power, gets into Lee's mind, and makes him feel very painful memories and hallucinations he never wanted to remember. She gives Lee an illusion of painful memories, the immortal child as a kid asking Lee for help and crying, and suddenly Lee becomes traumatized, and the powers he'd kept under control go out of control. Because of that, all the objects around him fly around aimlessly, floating in the air. So everything around him is getting destroyed. Even Pal, Kong, and Sun are all flung away by the sheer influence of his power. Then Kong tries his best to resist with his strength, while Sun tells some lies to activate his power, sticks to the ground, and through that saves Kong too. As all these problems are happening, Kina teleports there to rescue Lee. Realizing things are out of Lee's control, with Kong and Sun's help she slowly walks against the force of his power, comes up to him to calm him, puts her hand on his shoulder and calls his name, and Lee, who'd been going through that traumatic experience, suddenly feels relief and calms down. But at the same time, because he used his powers so much, as a side effect blood comes from his nose and he falls unconscious. After that, realizing it's not right to stay there any longer, they all plan to teleport back using Kina's powers. As they pick up Lee and all stand together, Sun, without realizing it, lets out a lie that he isn't tired at all, and so his superpower activates and he gets stuck to that floor. At the same time, Kina's superpower activates while they're together, and everyone else teleports away from there. Then Pal returns there again, and so Pal won't find him. Sun takes back the lie he told, says the correct truth and quietly hides. But at the same time, because Kina teleported earlier and Sun didn't come with them at the right moment, Kina, suddenly distracted, teleports again with the unconscious Lee and lands at a different part of that very church. Then, to hide Lee there, somehow she tells Kong, and saying she'll look for a way out, she goes to find an exit, and while doing so she suddenly catches sight from outside of an experiment Dr. Ha is running. In it, the serum they'd made earlier from her blood is now injected by Dr. Ha and his group into the old man, who'd come to receive Kina's heart transplant. Actually, this old man was the director of all the experiments that happened there 20 years ago. Dr. Ha had actually worked under him. So after running secret experiments behind these kids for many years and becoming obsessed, that now old director wanted to kill our Kina, the immortal child, take her heart for himself, and live as an immortal man who never dies. It's for this that Dr. Ha captured her and did all of this. So now, they inject that serum into the director, and like a miracle he suddenly becomes young, like a 30-year-old, and everyone is shocked. Just as everyone is happy that the serum taken from Kina's body worked, his body suddenly starts changing again, and he becomes even more aged than before, unable to function, and dies right there on the spot. Wondering why someone who just become young suddenly aged again and died, Dr. Ha asks those standing there, and they say maybe they need more of Kina's blood to make more serum, and that only with a lot of serum can they permanently cure someone. Kina overhears all of this from behind a door. Realizing that once she's in their hands they'll forever experiment on her, taking her blood and killing her slowly with this serum. Kina tries to escape, but in the process she accidentally makes a small sound, and Pal comes to check what it is and sees her. But making sure they've seen her, Kina has that coffee again and at exactly the right time, teleports away from there. At the same time, when Dr. Ha tells Pal again to bring her back, Pal, having used his powers so much, is now so weak he's about to die. Seeing this, Juran tells him not to use his powers anymore, that it's dangerous for him, and that she'll find Kina herself. But Pal says this was an order from Dr. Ha, whom they see as a father, and that he can't disobey and goes straight after her. Meanwhile, Kina teleports to the very center of that church, where many of her neighbors have gathered, believing Pal to be someone truly blessed by God, and are worshiping him and the others there. Furious at seeing this, Kina tells everyone there that this is not really a church like they think, that behind it they run secret experiments and commit brutal crimes. But just as she's saying this, suddenly everyone's appearance and demeanor change, and they all start coming toward Kina. Even people in that crowd who know Kina now come to attack her, and she senses something is wrong. The thing is, this was actually Juran's doing, using her mind control power. She controlled everyone in that crowd, turned them against Kina, and ordered them to capture her. Hearing that, everyone now moves toward Kina like zombies, targeting her, and as they come to attack, she suddenly floats up into the air. When she looks, it's Lee, who's regained consciousness and used his powers to rescue Kina from that zombie-like crowd. Now the two of them, along with Kong, escape from their grip and run. But no matter how much they run, in the end they arrive right in front of the evil Pal. Now Lee asks Kina to first take Kong and teleport out of there, and then come back for him, and she agrees. But at the same time, if we look at Sun, he's still stuck back in that lab. But there he discovered some very important things. He finds that the people there dump dead bodies into an acid-like chemical, and that they've now loaded that same chemical into a few lorries, and that at a festival happening this evening, they plan to spray this liquid over all the people in the city. Doing so will give those people abilities like the ones Kina, Kong, and Sun got, turning the whole city into people with powers like these, and from among them they'll create the immortal power people they need. Sun understands all these truths, realizing that if this isn't stopped it will harm his own daughter and wife in the city and turn them like him. He tries to escape, and on the way he gets caught by those zombie worshippers. At first he pretends to be one of them, but they catch him red-handed and decide to finish him off. Right at that moment, Kina rushes in with a chainsaw and rescues Sun. Then taking Sun to where Lee was, she plans to gather them and teleport away. But when she gets there, she can't find Lee or Pal anywhere. Moreover, from the condition of that hall and the blood on the floor, she realizes a big fight took place between Pal and Lee and that something dangerous happened. Not knowing where Lee is now, she panics badly. Meanwhile, because Pal used his power so extensively in that fight earlier, now that black color is spreading even to Pal's face. The side effect has grown so much that he dies right there in the middle of the church, in front of Ju-ran. At the same time, our Lee had figured out everything Sun said earlier in his own way. So in the earlier episodes, when we kept hearing that the world would end on December 31st, Lee realized that day is actually today, and that today they plan to destroy this entire city. Meanwhile, Kina had also learned all these things from Sun. So as the two of them stand there confused, not knowing what to do, the chemical they've loaded onto trucks, aimed at the entire city, they plan to spray over everyone at the festival happening in the city that night. With that horrifying scene of the chemical canisters set to be sprayed over people, today's episode ends. So as we saw in the last episode, Sun, learning all of this, tells Kina everything and says they have to protect this city somehow, that his wife and children are there, and they can never let those people end up in the same state as them, and he's crying his heart out. Meanwhile, to attack them now, because of Ju-ran's mind control, those worshippers arrive like zombies. As they target Kina and Sun and walk toward them, Grandma arrives with the detective, and when she speaks to those worshippers using a microphone, Ju-ran's mind control breaks at that spot. So now, not understanding what they were doing there, they all return to normal. Meanwhile, Lee goes and confronts Dr. Ha directly, asking why he commits such a crime, and why he's going to destroy this entire city. Dr. Ha says that 20 years ago he ran these experiments on 75 children, of which 25 died on the spot, and the remaining 50% transformed a little but later died of various causes. Actually, one of them was that immortal child. Likewise, if he releases the chemical over this entire city, at least one person will surely become an immortal child, and with that he can change the whole world, Dr. Ha tells him. Furious to hear this, Lee tells him it'd be better if he died himself to save this world and goes to kill Dr. Ha, but suddenly many lasers are pointed at him. The reason is that Ju-ran, in her rage over Pal's death, has taken the lead to kill Lee, using mind control on a group of soldiers and ordering them to kill Lee. So now, with many soldiers surrounding Lee, all pointing at him and shooting, not a single bullet hits him. He uses his telekinesis to hold every bullet around him in the air, then sends them back in the opposite direction. So the bullets go back at the soldiers who shot them, and many soldiers are taken down. Meanwhile, Ju-ran barely slips away, but on the way a bullet strikes Dr. Ha. Right behind them a huge explosion occurs, blowing everything there to pieces. Hearing all this noise, Kina quickly teleports there and looking at each person, searches for her master Lee. She rescues the injured soldiers she sees there and teleports them to safety. But no matter how much she looks, she can't find Lee among them. Actually, at the start of this drama, 20 years ago, during those experiments, we saw them capture a man named Kim who'd been a security guard there. But although Kim knew the plight of those children years ago, he couldn't do anything to save them. So seizing this chance to correct that mistake, it was Kim himself who rescued Lee from there. Meanwhile, Ju-ran goes and looks at Dr. Ha, and seeing he's already been hit by a bullet and is now unconscious and in danger, she takes the serum she had made from Kina's blood and injects it straight into Dr. Ha. But his heart stops and he dies right there on the spot. So now, having lost Pal whom she saw as a brother and Dr. Ha whom she saw as a father, Ju-ran, in her rage, uses mind control on everyone she sees and turns them against Ki-na and Lee. She even mind controls the detective and orders him to attack Grandma, but right on time Ki-na arrives and teleports Grandma to a safe place. Meanwhile, realizing his city is in danger, certain they planned this crime for the festival happening that evening, goes to where the festival is being held and warns his wife and daughter, who are there handling the festival, along with the whole crowd, telling them not to stay there because it isn't safe and that disaster will strike here tonight. But everyone mocks him, asking what nonsense he's talking, and his wife, embarrassed, runs away from there. So even though he told the truth, no one believes him, and our son stands there in despair. Kong comes to see him, then Ki-na teleports there too, and they understand that whatever the church people planned, they'll carry it out tonight, and that Dr. Ha had set up one of his blind sisters for it. They realize the plan is for her to bring that chemical into the city loaded on trucks. So the three of them decide that even if no one else believes them, they'll fight for their city and protect it. So the three split up and go separate ways searching for those trucks, but they can't find them. But on the way, they manage to find Lee. So Ki-na, thrilled to see her master Lee, runs toward him, but he turns to attack them. The thing is, having lost everything, Ju-ran has now finally gotten into Lee's mind and is controlling him. So Lee, now very violent, uses his powers to throw cars at them and tries to attack the entire city. Meanwhile, Sun, seeing all this, goes straight to his wife and daughter, takes the daughter to a very safe place, puts earphones on her head, and tells his wife that he loves them both very much and that he'll definitely come back to them, saying how much he loves them, and then goes straight to help his friends. Meanwhile, Ki-na tries her best to break Lee out of that mind control, but Ju-ran is using all her power to control Lee, so Lee grabs poor Ki-na by the throat and starts to choke her. So Ki-na takes him along and teleports out of there, into a cave. Because she teleported, Lee's mind control breaks and he returns to his senses, and he hugs Ki-na. Then, with his mind control broken, Lee teleports again and reaches Sun and Kong. But at this time, Ju-ran controls the minds of the poor innocent people of their city and turns them against all four of them. So all four bring out their superpowers and fight everyone coming at them, while Sun's wife and daughter, whom he'd put in a safe place, watch in astonishment, because they could never believe the Sun standing before them was someone with a superpower or that he was protecting his city. But here, Sun sticks all the people onto a big balloon using his powers, and Ki-na teleports that balloon away, so they easily defeat everyone coming at them. Meanwhile, they realize that to end all of this they have to find Ju-ran, and that she'd surely be on top of some building. So Sun tells some lies, activates his power, climbs straight up to the top of a building, and finally finds Ju-ran. When we look at Ju-ran, because she used her powers so extensively, her hair has now turned gray and she's become very weak. As Sun tries to talk her down, her sister, that blind lady, arrives and flings Sun away from there. Then, as she's near death, Ju-ran tells the blind sister that Pal and Dr. Ha have died, and that she must demand an accounting for all their deaths. Then when we next look, Ki-na slowly walks up to Lee and hugs him. But without anyone realizing, she'd plunged a knife into Lee. Seeing this same thing from above, Ju-ran uses mind control on the people there and orders them to stab a knife into Ki-na and kill her, and they stab Ki-na from behind on the spot. So now, just as a confused Ju-ran thinks she's finished off Ki-na, Ki-na arrives with Kong and Sun. That's when they all realize that the one who stabbed Lee earlier, whom Ju-ran attacked thinking it was Ki-na, wasn't actually the real Ki-na, but an illusion the blind lady created using her hallucination powers. Moreover, the one Ju-ran just attacked wasn't the real Kina either but her own sister, the blind lady. Lee realizes this, and as the blind lady falls from the stab wound, Lee rushes to catch her, because 20 years ago, in the midst of all that trauma, she used to give not only him but the other children hallucinations to make them happy, so she was really a good-hearted person, he tells her. Meanwhile, having lost everyone and left all alone, Ju-ran, unknowingly having killed her own sister, lies there devastated with guilt, waiting for death. But at that same moment, they see something like a huge airplane hovering in the sky. Actually, in Dr. Ha's real plan, the trucks weren't meant to spray the people directly. Instead, they'd fixed all that chemical onto a balloon-like thing in the sky, and when it bursts and comes down, this entire city would be destroyed. That was their real plan. Realizing this and deciding there's nothing else they can do to stop it, and that they can't save the city, suddenly Kina gets an idea. So she tells Kong to use his powers to fling her and Sun straight up to that balloon in the sky, where, using Kong's sticking power, Kina can stay stuck to it, and then teleport the balloon away to some other place. Though at first the other three aren't willing to hear it, because this plan is very risky and is equivalent to her sacrificing herself. Since there's no other way to save the city, they agree to it. So now Kong flings her and Sun straight up into the sky, and after they reach there, Sun secures Kina and jumps straight down, and Lee safely catches him. Moreover, as Kina reaches the top, she lands exactly on that balloon where they'd stuck a time bomb, which detonates, and before that, chemical can fall onto the city. At exactly 12 o'clock on December 31st, at the time of the new year, she teleports away from there to somewhere else. The people watching from below could see an explosion in the sky, but before it reached the ground, Kina had successfully teleported away. But sadly, after that incident, no one saw Kina again, and not a single person even remembered all the things that happened there. While everyone celebrates the new year, only our wonder fools sit there thinking sadly of Kina. But no matter who forgot what, perhaps because Sun had put those earphones on his daughter's head, she alone remembered everything that happened very clearly. And the confidence that her father is a superhero was filled in her heart too. Meanwhile, Grandma and her neighbors, thinking Kina ran off somewhere and died, arrange a funeral for her, and while they're giving everyone food, a person in baggy clothes who looks like they haven't seen food in days walks in and starts grabbing and eating all the food at Kina's funeral. Suspicious, when they look at this person with their face covered, they realize it's actually Kina herself. Actually, she teleported to a desert and having no idea how to get back. That's why she's so late, and now she's walked in unwashed and dirty, which is why she looks like this, she explains. Whatever the case, seeing her return, everyone there is overjoyed. Meanwhile, Lee, who'd been heartbroken, hoping she'd come back today or tomorrow, hears the news, comes running to see her, and finally the two of them hug and are reunited. A few days later, just like his lifelong wish, Lee finds the address of the mother he lost in childhood, goes there and meets her. The mother, even without him saying anything, recognizes that the one who came is her son. So blood recognizes blood, and Lee finally fulfills his biggest wish. And so that city becomes a happy, normal city again. But when we're shown that church once more, Dr. Ha's body, which had been lying there rotting and decayed, suddenly comes to life, and he opens his eyes. Meanwhile, those three who'd been written off as useless and good for nothing happily and confidently walk away, having saved their city. With our wonder fools shown, our final episode ends. So guys, at the ending we saw Dr. Ha open his eyes. That might be because of the serum Ju-ran injected into his body right before he died. Anyway, what the now revived Dr. Ha is going to do, and whether he'll once again be a threat to Kina and her group, we don't know. Anyway, let's hope a second part comes. So this beautiful drama, full of mischief and childlike charm, ends here. So everyone who enjoyed the drama, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, watch with Aslu, and like the video. We'll see you again soon with more good dramas like this.